Welcome to the 14th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, 1966 team captain Mike Irwin, and Casey Kantz of WTAJ Sports. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. Your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the NitWits on AltoonaMirror.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NitWits. I'm Nick Foley, along with my good friends Neil Riddell, Mike Irwin, and Mark Brennan. I haven't seen these guys in a while, but we're bringing you the NitWits today after Penn State goes into Madison with a chance to advance to the inaugural Big Ten championship game, and instead they get mauled by the Badgers and come back to University Park with a 45-7 loss. Okay, gentlemen, the general consensus would probably have put Penn State as an underdog going into Madison. I think we could all agree on that, except for Mr. Irwin, who picked them to win. But how do we kind of assess this performance by Penn State in this type of situation?
Well, not as good as yours to come in and hit the ground running with a slap on.
Welcome back.
Wow. Yeah. Penn State was a 15-point underdog. They had played with so much character all year that I thought, I think all of us thought it would be closer, but the players wouldn't admit this, but I think the mental fatigue caught up to them, particularly once they got behind. And Wisconsin's a great team.
Yeah, Wisconsin, obviously. I can't figure out how that team lost 2 games. It's really hard. I know they're a different team at home than they are on the road, but to think that team lost to Ohio State, it really is tough to wrap your head around. As Neil said, the players to a man said they weren't emotionally drained. I don't buy it. Just covering it, and not to minimize anything that anybody else has been through, but just covering it has been a real challenge. I can only imagine these players living through all this controversy over the last couple weeks. So they completely did not get it done out there, but I would like to say I still maintain that these guys handled themselves with so much class and character. From their perspective, it was sad to see the way they flopped there at the end. But even after that game, they came out, met the media, handled all their everything that they were supposed to do, and I still think this is going to go down as one of the greater Penn State teams that I've covered in the sense that they've reacted to all this controversy so well.
I think, looking at Wisconsin, I think Penn State realized they had to play almost a perfect game to beat Wisconsin. And Penn State self-destructed, on Saturday.
Certainly
they started out well, and then, the second series after it's 7-7, they throw the interception, and it was all downhill. They get a good return on the punt on the third possession, and Brown, they get a call for blocking in the back and move that back, then immediately get an offside call, and then Zordich on the kickoff return. If anything bad was going to happen, I'm not sure it was an emotional letdown. I just think that circumstances of the game, 3 or 4 turnovers, the interception and the 3 fumbles just killed them.
A lot of mistakes.
You can't make those mistakes against a team like Wisconsin.
And special teams, I thought, really fell apart. The return, they had a couple returns, but they had 3 fumbles on special teams, lost 2 of them. And they seemed off guard on these pooch kickoffs that Wisconsin was doing.
Yeah, and Mike, I get where you're coming from, but they did not make those mental errors for most of the season. And that's why I think it's easy to connect the dots and say that it did finally catch up to them. That once they got behind a little bit, you could see the wind was kind of out of their sails. And I really do think there's something to be said for that.
But if you look at the mistakes that they made, and McGloin pass, he's looking for Moy, he underthrows a little bit. Zordi's running the ball back and getting hit on a kickoff return and fumbling the ball. Silas Red running into Johnny Troutman to start the second half if he had any hope at all. And it looked like he drops a screen pass that probably would have been a big gainer. So, I mean, I don't think they're that far behind Wisconsin. They certainly were on Saturday. I mean, Wisconsin has a good
you did allude to the fact that, though, they did realize going in that they had to play a near perfect game.
Oh, I
to
agree,
compete.
yes. I mean, given the circumstances that happened, I mean, yes, I admit Wisconsin's a better team than Penn State. And I knew we had to play.
Stop the press.
Yeah, after a 38-point win.
Did we all hear that correctly?
Well, Mike, Penn State played two great teams this year, and they got outscored 72-18. And I think this is going to be a significant road back. I think their recruiting has steadily eroded over the last X number of years. When you don't have your head coach out on the road for years and years, I just don't think they have as many good players as a Wisconsin and Alabama.
The one thing that's jumped out at me, and I go back to it all the time, is the development of offensive linemen and maybe the recruitment of offensive linemen just has not been there, because I do think they match up in a lot of different ways. I mean, defensively, you can't argue with what the players they've put into the NFL. You look at the leading tacklers in the NFL, and it's all these Penn State guys. Defensive tackles have been really good. Clearly with the quarterback situation, that came unraveled the last couple of years, with all due respect to the guys who are there now. So that's been a real issue. But skill position, I think they're okay. To me, a lot of it's the offensive line and obviously quarterback.
Very, very good point. And we could actually have another show with that, the offensive development players
Yeah.
and Penn State compared to their defensive players in the NFL. Is case in point, a lot of more defensive players from Penn State than offensive players.
I know we're going to discuss this in another segment or another block later on.
Right, block. I like that
But,
terminology.
is Penn State still in the elite of the Big Ten or in the elite of college football? And I have a lot of arguments to say there still are there. And there are a couple players. I mean, Russell Wilson transferring, to Wisconsin made a big difference in that game. I mean, I don't think anybody in the country can defend him. I mean, all the weapons he brings to the table, besides Monty Ball running the ball. So, yeah, Wisconsin clearly had a better team this year than Penn State. Now, if you go back the last 5 or 6 years, their record isn't as good as Penn State.
But I think the whole offensive development is a question. We were watching the NFL earlier today, and I wondered whether Robbie Gould is the best offensive player that Penn State has who's in the NFL. Who am I missing?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's probably it. I mean, I know Jordan Norwood caught a touchdown pass today, but he's
guy
a guy
wasn't even drafted.
Yeah, but I think the other thing about this season is you have to look at the Big Ten and realize this was not a great year for the Big Ten. Wisconsin is really the only elite team. There's no question about it. They're the only thing close to an elite team in the Big Ten, in my view, this year.
Michigan State might get
Yeah, but I still don't think that you could put them up there. And if you were to put Michigan State up against an Alabama or an LSU, I really think Wisconsin would have a good shot in one of those games. I don't think anybody else would.
One quick point about Matt McGloin. I think he's been a serviceable quarterback, but the better opponents he hasn't quite, and maybe some of that is the people around him. But he hasn't been quite as good the last 3 games as he was most of the year.
All right, well, the Nittany Lions still finished the regular season at 9-3, a solid finish any way you look at it, given what this team has been through. So the question is, what's next for this team? Are the Nittany Lions going bowling, and if so, where?
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental.
Hey, I'm Penn State wide receiver Derek Moore, and you're watching the Nitwits.
All right, Derek, thank you, everyone, and welcome back to the Nitwits. The possibility of playing in a BCS Bowl is now done for Penn State, but what about a New Year's Bowl or any other bowl?
Mark, why don't you start there?
Well, I'll be shocked if they don't end up in a bowl. I mean, I know there's a train of thought out there from some people that, just end the season now and move on with the coaching search and let everybody try to start healing from all of this terrible stuff that has happened. But I really do think that in respect to the players who were not involved in any of this and who have put their hearts out there, I do think they deserve to go to a bowl, and I hope that they do go to a bowl. Where are they going to land? You know, clearly they're not going to be in a Cap 1 or an Outback, some of these more high-profile non-BCS bowls. My gut feeling is they have a shot at the Gator. Don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to end up in one of those Texas bowls. There's a couple there, the Meineke and the, what's the other one, Neil? The Meineke and the, we don't even know the names of them. One's in Houston, one's in Dallas. I think they're going to have one of those.
I think it is called, is it Ticket City?
Yeah,
Bowl?
Ticket City and Meineke Clark here. But that's, you know, playing
you could end up with maybe a matchup with the University of Texas, which would be a good name matchup somewhere, and maybe in the Ticket City Bowl. But I just don't want to see these players, if it looks like there's going to be political pressure not to take Penn State, and some of these sponsors don't want to deal with it. I hope that Penn State is proactive and doesn't make these guys wait for a Little Caesars type of an invitation and let them swing and twist in the wind, because I think they've suffered enough. But
you brought up that scenario, whether they should even go to this.
Yeah, well, I just don't think the players should have to suffer. Hopefully there is a bowl that'll take them, and they'll be able to have a good experience. But some of those aren't exactly, you know, Penn State type of rewards.
So I agree with Mark that these kids are entitled to go to a bowl game. These kids had nothing to do with this violation or alleged violation. And to take that away from the kids, the opportunity to play in a bowl game, I think is wrong. And I don't think you want to punish all of Penn State. They still travel well. Even at Wisconsin, I watched some of the people that were in Wisconsin. So Penn State is still traveling well. So you're gonna. I mean, where do you draw the line as to quit the punishment on?
To Neil's point, though, is it worth sending these guys to a bowl if it's a really low tier bowl?
I think the kids want to go to a bowl game. I mean, that's their goal in the beginning of the year, is to go to a bowl and play in a bowl. And hopefully, some of these bowl committees would, look deeper into things than.
Well, that's going to be the question.
No, I mean,
I don't think you want them looking too deep.
Well, no, because I mean, there's been some violations that have occurred, but everybody has them convicted before anything has even happened. I mean. Joe Paterno getting fired, and I mean, we had to wait for the facts to come out. The media jumps on a lot of this stuff, and I think
media
they're wrong. Well, yeah, they are.
Wait a minute,
they're already persecuting everybody involved with the program.
Well, did the media fire Joe or the board?
Well, the board did because of media pressure, I think.
Well, it's certainly.
I think a lot of it had to do with
maybe because they fired their president and they didn't have a head that they could combat some of the stuff head on.
We're going to need a referee on that side.
But I certainly agree your point that these players, these athletes, had nothing to do with the entire situation, and then they therefore deserve a reward that they earned all season long. The question is, who is going to take a chance on this team?
Hopefully it's one of the
a good tier bowl?
The Gator or one of these Texas bowls, and you can have a good time there.
And they listen. Mike makes a good point. I mean, they still are generating great TV ratings, and fans will travel to see them. All things considered, compared to some of the other programs at Purdue or somebody else that these games might get. And I think you have to be careful when you start classifying these bowls. Penn State's had some great times and played some really good games down at the Alamo Bowl. I know they're not involved with that bowl anymore, but you can go down to the Texas Bowl and have a good time.
I think, if you look at the records, I think Penn State's number 2 all-time in bowl percentage of wins. I mean, and probably second to Alabama, I think, in bowl victory. So they've traveled well in the past.
And they certainly travel well.
Continue.
Absolutely.
And if they deserve it, they still should go.
All right, well, while we learn what bowl fate awaits this Penn State team, what about the future at coach? Earlier this week, interim head football coach Tom Bradley made it clear he wants the job. But is that likely? We'll explore straight ahead.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs.
Now back to Nitwits. A roundtable look at Nittany Lion football.
All right, welcome back. We're back here on the Nitwits. 3 weeks ago, most of the college football world was stunned when the Penn State Board of Trustees got rid of legendary head coach Joe Paterno. In his place, longtime assistant Tom Bradley. So, will he be next year's head coach as the permanent coach of this Penn State team as they move forward? We started with Mark last time. Let's go back to you, Neil.
Well, I don't think so. I think Tom has done an incredible job in the face of the worst kind of adversity that any program can deal with. I just think at the end of the day that they're going to move in a different direction. And I think Tom has a sense of that. I know he definitely would want the job, and I think he's he's done great. And I've said before, I think one of the problems is that the transition of Joe didn't happen sooner. Maybe after last year when he won the 400th, and now for so many reasons that this wouldn't have potentially, as it exploded and blown up the end of his tenure. But I think that, now all the assistants are going to be looking for jobs.
That was my next question, is how likely that any of these coaches...
Well, listen, I know. I don't agree with a lot of the media types earlier session, and I think Tom Bradley ought to be the new coach. I think it's going to make it a lot easier to maintain the tradition of Penn State in the transition. Because what happens to all these guys like, the Larry Johnsons, the Van der Lindens, and the Bradleys? Well, they haven't done anything wrong that I know of. And why are we punishing those people? And chances are they recruited most of these athletes that are down there. It's going to be a lot easier transition.
But does it affect the future? Does it affect the future athletes that may be considering here if you keep some of these coaches?
Well, Tom Bradley said after the game he was going to go on a road recruiting. And I think he's an excellent salesman for the program. And if they want to maintain these athletes that have already signed, they got to keep these coaches in position down there. I mean, whatever Tom Bradley did or he didn't do, I mean, I don't think you can, punish somebody on hearsay evidence, And a lot of people think, well, just because you're part of Penn State that you don't belong here. But I think that I'm sure all the lettermen at Penn State would support Tom Bradley as the new head coach. And I think that transition would be a lot easier if they would name Tom Bradley as head coach.
Well, Tom Bradley hasn't answered any of the questions about what he knew or did not know about the Sandusky situation, and nor should he have. I mean, but he will have to answer those questions. You assume if he gets in, I would hope he gets an interview for this job at the very least when he talks to Dave Joyner and the new president, that he would have to address those questions privately to them about what he knew or what they didn't know, and then maybe they could make a more balanced decision. But I'm kind of with Neil. My heart goes out to Tom Bradley because he's waited for this his whole life, and he's done nothing but handle himself with class and dignity and a little bit of a sense of humor now that, I think he can, because we're getting a little bit further into it. And it's just too bad. I'll steal this from Neil. I mean, you go out to Wisconsin and you see the way they handled the transition from Alvarez to Bielema, and you wonder, had Joe not stepped away, irrespective of all this other terrible stuff that's happened, because it was terrible, but had he stepped away 10 years ago and had a more natural transition, it would have been nice to see Bradley have that opportunity
or even
earlier.
2 or 3 years ago, and it was such an interesting image before the game. Alvarez is out there on the field, and he's wearing, like, virtually a full-length winter coat, practically down to his ankles. He looked like a king. He's talking to Bradley, he's talking to Jay.
Still very much in a program.
Grabs Bielema, and I'm thinking, my God, sometimes it's bigger to be the former coach and have managed all this than it is to be the current coach.
Yeah.
And it disappointed me for the whole scene that Penn State right now uncertainty is.
Any final thoughts for you?
Well, no, I just think, Tom Bradley, knowing all the kids that are on the team and knowing what Joe's rule was of those kids going to class. I mean, and to change all that to get somebody new that doesn't even know the faces of these kids or what they've been through, the family life. I'm sure, I just would support Tom Bradley in a transition there. Now, if he doesn't do it in the first year or so, then go looking again. But
it's a fascinating situation because if there are some star candidates out there.
And I was going to say, really, really quickly, any names that might pop into this venue, this situation, this scenario that you might think of? Would there be a Tony Dungy possibly?
That's the guy.
I don't get the idea just from trying to get a sense of whether he might be interested that he's, and that's just really unofficial. But
sure.
I kind of got to read that
pure speculation
that he probably wouldn't go.
But you don't know. So these coaches in these situations, we know they never are very straight. Urban Meyer was saying he had not talked to Ohio State at all. And it seems like it's been pretty much a done deal for a couple of weeks now. Al Golden just signed an extension with Miami. What does that mean? We don't know, and that's one of the tricky things about this. We have not covered these situations, and you have to read through a lot of tea leaves and that sort of thing to figure everything out.
How about a guy like Gruden?
Right?
Gruden
another
to me would be a lot of star power, and they need.
Yeah, but that's like pie in the sky type thing. If you look down,
you're Penn State.
No, but if you look down the list,
facilities in the country.
I'm not sure a lot of these coaches.
Tradition.
I look at, they're already in top 10 programs that we'd even won at Penn State. They're not the same type of individual.
I said John Gruden.
I'm just saying, Gruden would have no idea what's going on at Penn State.
I would take my chances with them.
Sleeping
Well,
power.
I'd take my chance with Tony Dungy, too.
I'll take my chance with Tom Bradley. My personal feeling is that way.
There you have it. We are coming to a close here on this edition of the Nitwits, but before we do, let's get it a little light, if you will. We'll unveil the latest star on this panel, our Nitwit of the Week revealed on the other side.
The Nitwits are brought to you by J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
I'm senior defensive tackle Devin Steele, and you're watching the Nitwits.
And welcome back, everyone. With his prediction of an 8-point spread at Penn State losing, Mark Brennan is our Nitwit of the Week with 3 total balls for the season, but apparently he's not the winner.
Yeah, I mean, I
Overall
have
winner.
these footballs now, but I was only off by 30 points, and somehow I still won. But I have to also say, as a fair-minded member of the media that Mike loves so much, that Neil Rudell has wrapped up Nitwit of the Year. So it's not about me, it's about him.
Well, thank you, Mark. I don't have a speech, but Mike clinched last place, but Diane Rudell still said Mike's her favorite nitwit, so it's okay.
Well, after 14 years, you deserve a Nitwit of the Year somewhere along that period of time.
Mike,
Well,
you-
because
I'm
they
really
lost.
proud. I'm happy for you, Neil. Congratulations,
It's been a
Mark,
tough
for
year.
the week and Neil for the season.
well, eventually Mike was going to let
That's
someone else
right.
have some fun, and
That's
this
right.
year it's Neil's year.
Well, it's been a
no
tough.
matter what happens, in it, whether they go to a bowl or not, Neil has locked it
Yeah,
up.
had they gone to the Big Ten championship game, everybody else would still be in it. Been a tough year, the tough month. But I think, as Mark has said, the players have really handled themselves with a lot of class and character.
And
we hope they get to a bowl game.
And one point on that, at the beginning of the season, many of us were picking 8-4, 7-5 possibilities, except for Mike. And this is a team that finished 9-3 in the regular season.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
9-3 was my prediction
Right.
at the beginning of the year.
We'll give you some.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't win many of the footballs during the course of the year.
He picked 9-3, and he picked
But I feel
Alabama to
good for
beat
my
him.
fellow
He picked them to win.
I'm just proud of my fellow Nitwits. I feel good that they finally won.
Congrats to all,
media
and
members.
stick around because we are going to have one more show, whether it's a pre-bowl show or a wrap-up show. We're planning on having one more here for the Nitwits as well. Thanks so much for joining us. Good night, everyone.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just Ask Rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. Your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the Nitwits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.